F-35 versus Sweden Gripen, the ultimate fighter showdown. Imagine two of the world's most advanced fighter jets going head-to-head, the F-35, America's cutting-edge stealth fighter, versus the Sweden Gripen, a nimble and cost-effective contender. In this high-stakes matchup, the F-35's stealth capabilities and superior sense of fusion give it a decisive edge over the Gripen and beyond visual range engagements. But the Gripen's agility, lower operational costs, and ability to operate from shorter runways make it a formidable opponent in close-range dogfights. As NATO allies like Canada and Portugal reconsider their F-35 purchases amid tensions with the US, the Gripen is emerging as a viable alternative. Which one would win in a dogfight? The debate continues. It's David versus Goliath, the giant of the skies versus the underdog that refuses to be out. Two nations, two visions. One battlefield in the sky. Let's start at the beginning. The F-35 Lightning II was born out of a dream to create a multi-role stealth fighter that could replace almost every fighter in Western air forces. The US wanted one aircraft that could do it all. Air-to-air combat, ground strikes, electronic warfare, reconnaissance, you name it. The project became the Joint Strike Fighter program, and after years of competition, Lockheed Martin's design won. The result was the F-35, sleek, stealthy, and stuffed with more electronics than most fighter jets had ever seen. But here's the catch. With greatness comes price. Developing the F-35 has cost the US and its allies over $1.7 trillion across its lifetime. That's right. Trillion with a T. The F-35 isn't just an airplane, it's the most expensive weapons project in human history. Now contrast that with Sweden's approach. In the Cold War, Sweden wasn't part of NATO. They needed a fighter jet that could defend their airspace against the Soviet Union. But they couldn't afford the massive budgets of the US or USSR. They needed something clever, something new that could take off from highways, be repaired in minutes, and flown by conscript pilots, not just elite professionals. The result was the Gripen, first introduced in the late 1980s and constantly upgraded since. The Gripen is a masterpiece of efficiency. Small, lightweight, incredibly agile, and designed to be easy to maintain. Sweden's philosophy was simple. If we can't outspend our enemies, we'll outsmart them, and that's what makes this showdown so fascinating. The F-35 is like a heavyweight boxer, powerful, full of technology, and designed to dominate. The Gripen is like a martial artist, smaller, faster, cheaper, and built on brains rather than brute force. But which one would actually win? The F-35's biggest advantage can be summed up in one word: stealth. This jet is designed to be almost invisible on radar. In modern warfare, that's like being a ghost. Your enemy can't shoot at what they can't see. The F-35's shape, coating, and internal weapons base all make it incredibly hard to detect. Imagine a battlefield where Gripens are flying, their radars scanning, trying to find their target. And suddenly, without warning, an F-35 appears on their sensors for a split second. By then it has already fired its missiles and vanished again. That's the nightmare scenario the F-35 brings, but here's where things get interesting. The Gripen isn't helpless. In fact, it's one of the most networked fighters in the world. It was designed with data sharing at its core, meaning multiple Gripens can link their sensors together. Think of it like wolves hunting in a pack. One Gripen might not see the F-35 clearly, but together, they can share information and build a bigger picture. And because Sweden's designers knew they couldn't rely on stealth, they doubled down on electronic warfare. The Gripens, jammers, decoys, and countermeasures are considered some of the best in the world. In other words, it might not be invisible, but it can blind and confuse its enemies. So, while the F-35 is the ghost, the Gripen is the trickster. One relies on hiding, the other relies on deception. Now, let's talk money. The F-35, depending on the version, costs around $80 to $100 million per jet. That doesn't even count the enormous maintenance and software costs. Flying an F-35 for just 1 hour can cost over $35,000. Meanwhile, the Gripen comes in at less than half that price. A Gripen E the latest variant costs around $60 million, and its operating costs are a fraction of the F-35. In fact, some reports say it costs less than $7,000 per flight hour. What does that mean in a war? It means for the price of one F-35, you could field almost two Gripen. And when it comes to air combat, numbers matter. Because while the F-35 is a technological marvel, it can still only be in one place at a time. This is where the David versus Goliath story really comes alive. The US and its allies might have the most advanced jet in the world, but smaller nations can actually afford Gripens in meaningful numbers. And that changes the game. Alright, let's imagine it. Open skies, F-35s versus Gripens, meeting in direct combat. The F-35 would almost certainly get the first shot. Its stealth means it can detect the Gripen before the Gripen detects it. By the time the Swedish pilots realize what's happening, missiles are already on their way. But here's the twist. If the Gripens survive that first wave, and with their electronic warfare, decoys, and sheer agility, some of them might things start to shift. The Gripen is more agile than the F-35 in close combat. It has a better thrust-to-weight ratio, faster acceleration, and a design optimized for dogfight. The F-35, by contrast, was never built to be a pure dogfighter. In fact, some US pilots have admitted that older jets like the F-16 could outturn the F-35 in certain situations. So if a Gripen gets close, if it survives long enough to force a dogfight, the battle becomes far more even. Suddenly, the underdog has a real chance. The US fields F-35s. Sweden fields Gripens. Over weeks and months, the cost of keeping those F-35s flying skyrockets. Maintenance delays ground entire squadrons. Meanwhile, Gripens are being serviced on highways, refueled in minutes, and sent back up. The F-35s may win the flashy battles, but the Gripens win the war of endurance. And that's the genius of Sweden's design. It's not just about one dogfight. It's about fighting a war that lasts months. And in that kind of war, efficiency can matter more than stealth. Here's the thing, calling the F-35 just a fighter jet is almost an insult. It's not just a plane, it's a flying supercomputer. The F-35's cockpit is like stepping into a science fiction movie. Huge touchscreen displays replace traditional dials. The pilot wears a $400,000 helmet that literally lets them see through the plane. Cameras on all sides project a 360-degree view into the visor, so the pilot can look down through the floor of the aircraft and still see the ground. On top of that, the F-35 is plugged into a massive digital network. It can track enemy aircraft, share targeting data with ships, ground troops, and other jets, and even act as a battlefield quarterback, guiding less advanced planes to their targets. It's like the iPhone of the skies, sleek, powerful, expensive, and designed to dominate through information. But here's the twist, every iPhone has a hacker, and the Gripen, that's the hacker. Sweden couldn't compete by making the most expensive jet. Instead, they built one of the most upgradable and adaptable fighters in history. The Gripen was designed with modular software and hardware, meaning Sweden can upgrade it faster than almost any other jet. The F-35 needs years and billions of dollars for software patches. The Gripen Saab can reprogram and update it in weeks. It's like comparing a massive corporate machine to a nimble startup. And that agility matters. Because wars don't wait for software updates. Displays replace traditional dials. The pilot wears a $400,000 helmet that literally lets them see through the plane. Cameras on all sides project a 360-degree view into the visor, so the pilot can look down through the floor of the aircraft and still see the ground. On top of that, the F-35 is plugged into a massive digital network. It can track enemy aircraft, share targeting data with ships, ground troops and other jets, and even act as a battlefield quarterback, guiding less advanced planes to their targets. It's like the iPhone of the skies, sleek, powerful, expensive, and designed to dominate through information. The F-35 program isn't just about the plane, it's about training a generation of pilots to use its high-tech systems, US and NATO. Pilots flying the F-35 get some of the most advanced simulators in the world, training to use stealth, electronic warfare, and networking to crush enemies before they're even seen. But it has a downside too. Flying the F-35 in real life is so expensive. Pilots can't get as many flight hours as they used to. You can't rack up hundreds of practice dogfights if every hour costs $35,000. That means a lot of F-35 training happens virtually, not in the skies. Now compare that with Sweden's Gripen philosophy. Gripens are designed to be flown a lot. They're cheaper to operate, and Sweden intentionally made them simple enough for part-time, even conscript pilots to fly. The training is designed around flexibility, the idea that even if your best pilots are out, the plane can still be flown and fought effectively. This is where the underdog story really shines. The F-35 makes its pilot into a tech manager, orchestrating sensors, stealth, and weapons. The Gripen makes its pilot into a dogfighter, focused on agility, speed, and battlefield adaptability. So the question is, would you rather be a pilot commanding the most advanced flying computer in the world, or one sitting in a lean, lethal machine designed to survive against all odds? Now it's the point where things get spicy. The Gripen has faced off against some of the world's best jets in training exercises and shocked everyone. In 2015, during NATO drills, Gripens reportedly scored kills against German Eurofighters and even US F-15s. The small Swedish jet held its own against larger, more expensive aircraft, proving that in the right hands, it's no pushover. The F-35, meanwhile, has also been tested with mixed results. In its early years, test pilots admitted it struggled in dogfights against older jets like the F-16. Now Lockheed insists those issues have been fixed, and newer versions of the F-35 are much more capable in close combat. But the reputation stuck. The F-35 isn't a dogfighter, it's a sniper, designed to kill from long range before a dogfight even happens. And here's the kicker. Many countries buying Gripens like Hungary, Brazil, and South Africa don't need to invade anyone. They just need to defend their skies. For them, a jet that can scramble quickly, fight hard, and be maintained on highways is perfect. The US and NATO, on the other hand, want to project power anywhere in the world. That's where the F-35's stealth and networking dominate. It's built to fight wars oceans away from home. The Gripen is built to fight in its backyard. So when these jets meet in war games, it's not just about which jet is better, it's about what kind of war you're trying to fight. A war breaks out in Europe. NATO fields F-35s. Sweden and its allies fly Gripens at first. The F-35s are unstoppable. They strike targets deep behind enemy lines, slip past radars, and take down Gripens before they even know what hit them. But weeks pass. The F-35 squadrons need more spare parts. Maintenance delays keep jets grounded. Budgets strain under the cost of flying them every day. Meanwhile, Gripens are taking off from roads, refueling in 10 minutes, rearming in 20, and getting back in the fight. They don't have the stealth advantage, but they're always there, always flying, always fighting. This is the difference between dominance and endurance. The F-35 is built to dominate quickly. The Gripen is built to endure for the long haul. So which matters more? In a short, high-tech clash, the F-35 probably wins. But in a grinding war of attrition, the Gripen might just outlast it. Let's be clear. The F-35 is the more advanced aircraft. Its stealth, sensors, and battlefield networking are unmatched. If these two jets ever clash directly, the F-35 would almost always get the first shot, and in modern air combat, getting the first shot usually means victory. But don't underestimate the Gripen. Because wars aren't fought in laboratories or sales brochures. They're fought in the real world with budgets, logistics, politics, and human pilots. And in that world, the Gripen's efficiency, agility, and adaptability make it far more dangerous than its size suggests. So maybe the real answer isn't which jet is better. Maybe the real answer is which jet is better for you. If you're a superpower with trillions to spend, planning to fight wars across the globe, you want the F-35. If you're a smaller nation that needs to defend its skies without going bankrupt, you want the Gripen. Alright, you've heard the stats, you've seen the numbers, but let's stop talking, and let's imagine what would actually happen if an F-35 and a Gripen met in a real dogfight. 2 pilots, 2 jets, 1 sky. Let's break it down. The Baltic sky is calm at first glance. Clouds drift lazily. The sea below glitters in silver streaks, but hidden within this peaceful canvas predators stalk. High above, an F-35 lightning to prowls silently, its shape barely reflecting radar waves. To the naked eye, it's invisible. To the senses of older jets, it's a ghost. This is America's invisible hand, an assassin designed to kill before being seen. But cutting through that same sky, faster and lower, is a Gripen, sleek, agile and alert, its sensors wide open. Its pilot scanning, listening to the silent chatter of his wingman over Sweden's legendary data link system. But cutting through that same sky, faster and lower, is a Gripen, sleek, agile, and alert, its sensors wide open. Its pilot scanning, listening to the silent chatter of his wingman over Sweden's legendary data link system. Every Gripen in the sky is a node in a digital web. Together they don't just fly, they hunt as one. And somewhere out there, the hunter and the hunted are about to collide. The F-35's systems blink a live contact. A blip appears. No alarms, no chaos. Just calm certainty. It locks on. Without hesitation, a missile tears free, streaking across the void. The Gripen pilot gets the warning too late. His screen flashes red. He brakes hard, but the missile is already there. A burst of light. A jet disappears into flame. The F-35 has drawn first blood. But this is no ordinary dogfight. The moment the Gripen goes down, the entire Swedish network lights up. The surviving Gripen scatter, feeding each other data, switching frequencies, activating electronic countermeasures. What one Gripen learns, all of them know. The sky is no longer empty. It is alive with deception. Suddenly, the hunter isn't sure anymore. The F-35's pilot sees jamming spikes across his radar. Targets flicker in and out. His stealth keeps him hidden, but stealth isn't invincibility. Because once a Gripen locks even a shadow of a contact, the Meteor missile comes alive. Unlike older missiles, Meteor doesn't just chase, it predicts. It reads, adjusts, out. Even if the F-35 dives, twists and throttles hard, the Meteor is already there. Waiting, correcting its path like a predator that never loses sight of prey. The sky becomes a deadly trade. F-35s firing from the dark. Gripens answering with relentless swarms. Each side testing the other's doctrine. Each pilot straining against the limits of man and machine. And here's the truth. This clash is bigger than 2 jets. The F-35 embodies the doctrine of an empire, global reach, coalition warfare, overwhelming technology. It doesn't just fight for survival, it fights for dominance. The Gripen, by contrast, is the blade of a nation surrounded by giants. Sweden knew its bases could be destroyed within hours of war. So it built a fighter that could land on a frozen road, refuel from a truck, and launch again in minutes. The F-35 is a fortress in the sky. The Gripen is a survivor in the storm. Now the F-35's greatest edge begins to fade. It's heavier, less agile. Its design favors stealth and sensors, not hard turns and knife-edge maneuvers. The Gripen, however, thrives here. Light, nimble, with a thrust-to-weight ratio that allows it to pirouette in the sky. In a turning battle, the Gripen can outdance the F-35, getting its nose on target for a missile or a cannon burst. For once the wolf has cornered the ghost. This is the essence of the Baltic duel. If the F-35 keeps the fight at long range, it dominates. If the Gripen drags it into close quarters, the battle becomes a coin toss. And so the question remains, is it better to be unseen, or to be Is dominance worth more than resilience? The answers are written not in numbers, not in specs, but in the smoke trails across the Baltic skies. The Baltic sky crackled with tension. Every radar screen lit up, every headset buzzed with frantic voices, and yet, above that restless sea of steel-gray waves, silence ruled. Sweden's Gripens sliced through the atmosphere like predators in their hunting ground, while the shadow of the intruder still lingered, daring, taunting, waiting to be flushed out. And this wasn't just about airframes or missiles anymore. This was about credibility, reputation, and survival. Because every second in that sky wasn't only watched by Swedish controllers' NATO command, Russian observers, and even smaller Baltic nations stared at their radar feeds, holding their breath. The Gripen pilots knew it too. Their jets weren't the heaviest, nor the most expensive, but they carried a secret: agility, resilience, and the spirit of a nation that had built its defense around the idea of never being caught off guard. Suddenly contact confirmed. Bearing northeast, low altitude, the intruder had reappeared, not a ghost this time, but a silhouette growing larger, cutting across the horizon. The lead Gripen banked hard, wings biting into the thin Baltic air, the pilot's voice steady but sharp. The intruder had reappeared, not a ghost this time, but a silhouette growing larger, cutting across the horizon. The lead Gripen banked hard, wings biting into the thin Baltic air, the pilot's voice steady but sharp. Target locked, switching to active tracking. Down below, in Sweden's command bunker, the room went silent. Monitors displayed the two jets racing toward each other like rival gladiators about to clash in an ancient arena. What followed was not just a test of machines, but a test of doctrines. The Russian aircraft, larger, heavier, bristling with raw power, represented brute force. The Gripen, compact, efficient, deadly in silence, embodied precision. And in that thin line of Baltic sky, these two philosophies were about to collide. The Swedish pilot whispered one last phrase to his wingmen: "Let's remind them why this is our sky." With that, the two Swedish Gripens accelerated, afterburners igniting, streaking across the Baltic like bolts of lightning. Their formation was tight, flawless, every maneuver a testament to years of training drilled into muscle memory. The Russian intruder loomed ahead, a hulking machine bristling with menace. Its wings glistened in the cold sunlight, missiles slung beneath like a row of silent threats. But the Gripen pilots knew better than to be intimidated by size. Sweden had designed these jets for this very scenario. Outnumbered, outgunned, but never outsmarted. The lead pilot pulled up sharply, climbing high into the blinding sky. His wingman dove low, skimming just above the sea's surface. Together they executed a pincer maneuver, so fluid, it seemed choreographed. From the ground, radar operators watched the shapes twist and weave a deadly dance of steel. Then came the voice over the radio.com, yet edged with defiance. "You are violating Swedish airspace. Turn back immediately, or we will escort you out." No reply. The Russian jet held its course. Its radar locked momentarily onto the high-climbing Gripen. Warning alarms screamed inside the cockpit. Yet the Swedish pilot didn't flinch. He rolled his jet, flipped upside down for a split second, then cut through the lock with a blinding dive, a move so sudden that the Russian pilot hesitated, breaking his targeting sequence. That hesitation was all the Gripens needed. The wingman, flying low, pulled up behind the Russian aircraft's blind spot. His targeting reticle painted the intruder bright red. Just one squeeze of the trigger and the Baltic would erupt in fire. But that wasn't Sweden's mission tonight. The goal wasn't destruction, it was dominance. It was sending a message. So instead, the Gripen pilot inched closer, closer, until his nose cone hovered just behind the Russian's tail. So near that both pilots could almost see each other through the canopies. In that silent moment, the balance of power shifted. The intruder, once arrogant and untouchable, now felt the cold truth pressing against its wings. Sweden had him boxed in. The intruder banked away, peeling off into the gray horizon. No missiles fired, no casualties. Yet the message roared louder than any explosion. Sweden had shown the world that its sky was not up for negotiation. But here's the truth the world didn't see. This was just the beginning. Because in Moscow's war rooms, men in dark suits and cold eyes leaned over their maps, marking the Baltic not as a border, but as a battlefield still unfinished. And in Stockholm, Swedish commanders knew it too. The Gripen had bought them respect tonight, but respect is fleeting. The real question was, when the intruders returned, would they come back alone or with an entire squadron? The Baltic sky had been quieted, yes, but silence, as history teaches, is often just the prelude to the storm. The Russian jet disappeared over the horizon, its afterburner glow fading into the haze. On the radar screens, the red blip dissolved into nothingness, and for a brief moment, the Baltic was calm again. But inside Sweden's command center, no one celebrated. There were no cheers, no applause, only silence. Because everyone in that room knew, this was not victory. This was a warning shot. The commander, a man who had spent his life studying Russian tactics, leaned over the operations table. His eyes scanned the maps, the plotted flight paths, the intelligence reports. He spoke in a low voice that carried the weight of history. They weren't here to fight. They were here to measure us. The words hung heavy in the air. Across the sea, NATO headquarters lit up with urgent briefings. Screens replayed the confrontation to Gripen's boxing in a Russian intruder without firing a shot. Admirals, generals, and political advisors studied every frame, dissecting every maneuver. And while some praised Sweden's discipline, others saw danger in it. Because to the Kremlin, that hesitation not to fire could be read as restraint, or as weakness. Meanwhile, in Moscow, the mood was different. Behind closed doors, Russian officers reviewed their own footage, the Gripen's maneuvers, the daring intercept, the refusal to yield. One general tapped at the table with his knuckles and muttered, "They are smaller, but they are not afraid." For decades, Russia had relied on intimidation, the thunder of heavy bombers, the roar of powerful fighters. But Sweden had played a different game. It wasn't about brute force. It was about resilience, psychology, and the ability to say, "You will not cross this line." And yet this line was far from safe. The next morning, newspapers across Europe carried the story. Some downplayed it, calling it routine Baltic air patrol, but the truth spread quickly in military circles. Sweden had gone head-to-head with Russia and forced it back. Politicians debated in hushed tones. Should Sweden move closer to NATO? Should NATO tighten its presence in the north? Should Russia be confronted openly or quietly contained? The Baltic, once seen as a frozen frontier, was now a chessboard and every move risked escalation. Back in Stockholm, Swedish pilots returned to base. Their Gripens parked in perfect lines, engines cooling, cockpits open to the autumn air. They walked across the tarmac quietly, their faces unreadable, outwardly calm, inwardly restless, because they knew this wasn't over. Every pilot could feel it. The intruder would return. Not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. And next time, it might not be just one jet. It might be 2, 4, or an entire squadron testing Sweden's willpower. The Baltic sky had become a message board, and every nation was reading it. And in that fragile balance, one question echoed louder than any engine roar. When the storm comes, will Sweden stand alone, or will the world stand with it? The official reports described it as a routine intercept, a standard patrol. Nothing unusual, nothing to alarm the public. But behind the headlines, something far more dangerous was unfolding. 3 days after the Baltic standoff, an encrypted file appeared on a private intelligence forum, a place where ex-operatives, analysts, and shadowy intermediaries traded information like currency. The file contained flight data, call signs, and mission logs. Details that should have been buried inside Sweden's most secure defense servers. And yet, there they were, floating in the digital underworld for anyone willing to pay the price. At first it looked like a simple breach, a hack, but then came the chilling realization. The file wasn't stolen from Sweden, it was leaked from inside. Someone, somewhere, wanted this confrontation exposed. Inside Stockholm's intelligence agency, the atmosphere turned electric. Analysts pored over the data, tracing IP addresses, cross-referencing timestamps, who had access, who stood to gain. The commander who had warned that Russia was measuring them now faced an even more dangerous reality. The measurement wasn't just in the sky, it was inside their own walls. Meanwhile, NATO intelligence picked up fragments of chatter. Russian military channels weren't celebrating their incursion. They were furious, not at Sweden but at their own pilots. The leak revealed something NATO hadn't expected. The Russian jet had been ordered not to engage, but to record high-definition sensor sweeps, radar signatures, electronic warfare samples. Moscow wasn't testing Sweden's strength in combat, it was cataloging its every move, preparing a playbook for the next time. And now that playbook was public, the Baltic skies had fallen quiet again. No intruders, no dogfights, just the steady hum of patrols and the endless stretch of gray horizon. But beneath that calm, tension pulsed like an unseen current. The leak was never traced. No culprit unmasked. No mole uncovered. It's not David versus Goliath. It's the sword versus the spear. 2 different tools, built for 2 different battles. And maybe, just maybe, the true winner is the one whose pilot understands that best. So, what do you think? Would you put your money on the American stealth machine, the F-35, or the Swedish underdog, the Gripen? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and trust me, this debate is just getting started. And if you enjoyed this Ultimate Fighter Showdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more epic military breakdowns, and stay tuned because the skies are only getting hotter.